felt like I was ready for a rocket launch.
I know, right? I love that. I love how epic that countdown is. And then you saw that. I was trying to be smart. Like I played the countdown and then pressed live. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I should press the countdown again. And it flashed us on. So
it was beautiful.
Everybody out there, if you're out there, apologies for my production mishap. Super excited to have you guys here. If you are out there right now, get into the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, who you are. We'd love to make this interactive. And super excited today. I have John Ruffini with me. And for anyone who doesn't know, John, he is a leader within our space. He's been in the industry for a long time. Now he trains hundreds of recruiters on how to be more effective in their roles. He is an author. He's written a really great book as well, which we'll link into the chat at the end of the show as well. But John, why don't you just give the audience a quick introduction on who you are? I was going to say an elevator pitch, but that's too recruitment but just give us a quick introduction here and we'll get into
very apropos, Joel. First, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Love what you do. And I've been in the industry a while. You could say 20 plus years now, I guess, is at the stage where I'm just not doing a firm number. I'm just saying over 20. And I started out and most of my experience was in professional recruiting, running a full 360 desk, business development and recruiting, mainly in the areas of accounting and finance and information technology. Of late, I've been in the healthcare staffing space for the last 4.5 years. And the last 10 to 15 years of my career has really been spent and focused on sharing my knowledge and helping other people learn the business, hopefully avoid the mistakes that I made, and helping them learn the craft of recruiting, both the art and the science, and adjusting and adapting as the industry changes. You have to adapt also. So also bringing them current to things like that. So I'm currently with a company called Health Stress Workforce Solutions. We're part of HCA Healthcare, and I head up their professional development.
I love it. What I'm curious, what got you into healthcare? Because I mean, obviously, it's been really the last 4 or 5 years of your career. So what made you make that switch into healthcare?
It was interesting. I was at a point in my career prior where I was starting to stagnate a little bit. So you get those things saying, all right, where I am now, I'm probably not going to continue to grow at the level that I want to. So I was always curious about healthcare in general. I'd always heard a lot of things about it, and I knew the industry was booming. So two things. One, I was looking to move out of the position I was in, and I was looking at various opportunities, one of which just happened to be in the healthcare space. And that was the one that I ended up taking. That job relocated me to Orlando, Florida, and gave me exposure.
Not a bad place to get relocated to.
I came from Maryland. So came down to Orlando, Florida, spent about 18 months with that company. Wasn't the right fit for me, but it did give me the opportunity to learn the healthcare space, and then landed with my current employer a little farther south in Florida. So moved again, but much better role and an organization that's a better fit for me as well. So that's how I was exploring a bunch of things, but healthcare was always on the list of areas that I ultimately wanted to experience. It's interesting, Joel, the healthcare staffing is like no other animal I've ever experienced in the staffing industry. There's so many moving parts and variables. And when I was first interviewing for my first job in the healthcare space, I think the guy who I was interviewing with summed it up well. I said, so how is your staffing different from any other staffing? And he said, well, the people we put to work could kill someone. And I'm like, okay. So, it's a nice byproduct.
No pressure on
no pressure. But it reinforces the criticality of getting it right. Mind you, good recruiters get it right with whatever industry they're recruiting for. And there's always the nice byproduct that you're helping a company grow, you're helping someone advance their career. In healthcare, you're also putting someone at a bedside and you're providing patient care. So it adds that much higher level of a personal aspect to it, which is really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, I know in my, scarce experience I've had in healthcare, I know that it's extremely competitive. There's definitely a battle for talent. There's a lot of moving parts, like you said, as well. So I'm sure it's a lot different than maybe some of the other industries people are working in. I just want to say hi to a couple people. We've got Kritika out here. Hello. She said, please accept my connection request. I will. Just send it over. And we got Lisa said, hi, John.
What's up, Lisa?
And then she also said, John is amazing, all capitals.
Oh, wow.
And then Myro said hello to you as well. Yeah, guys, if you have specific questions on healthcare recruiting, if you've got questions in recruiting at all, I think John will be a great resource for us as well. You mentioned to me that you were speaking, was it for the 7th time consecutively with ASA? So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how you got involved in that?
Yeah, I got involved with the American Staffing Association, ASA, long time ago, and have always been a big fan of what they do for our industry. Met a lot of good people through ASA and learned a lot. So this fall in September, they're live again. Last year was virtual, so they're live again. And Staffing World is their biggest conference, and I'll be speaking about something that's near and dear to your heart, building your personal brand on social media at the conference out in Denver this September. So excited to once again be a part of that. It's a great community.
And where did you say that was again?
What's that?
Where are they holding it live?
It's going to be in Denver, Colorado.
Nice. I love it. Awesome. Well, I love the topic, and I think obviously it's something I'm really passionate about. How have you, obviously you're training a lot of recruiters in the organization. Everybody goes through your training. So talk to us a little bit about how you are training people and guiding people when it comes to personal brand and when it comes to recruiters building their personal brands and how they can integrate that into their daily strategy as well. I'd love to hear how you're bringing people in.
I'm a big fan of having a presence on social. It's interesting. I think you'd agree, social media is necessary for recruiters to be successful today, or if they want to be real successful, they need to have a presence. It isn't the only tool, but it has to be one of the tools. Yep. So how I have learned, and because I'm not a social media guru, but what I've done is really just follow and learn from people like you. I've followed people on different social media platforms who seem to get it and who also train on it. And I have just learned from them. First, I applied it myself to make sure it works. And then once I did, I was like, wow, this stuff does work. And we both share a mindset of just keep it simple. And once I figured that out, I'm like, okay, we're going to train on that and just integrate it. Again, see, very basic and simple, little things like, some people just don't know how to have a robust profile, realizing that that's basically their personal website and people are going to go to it. So having a presence, what does your profile look on one platform versus another platform, how they have to alter based on the audience. Just the whole basic stuff that you always preach about, joining groups, engaging in the conversation, giving more than you're taking, and your following just organically starts to build.
What are some of the challenges, I guess, when you're teaching people or you're coaching them on their personal brand? Like what are some of the challenges that you see, particularly with recruiters in terms of, reasons as to like why they aren't following through with it? Like what are some of the issues that you see regularly? Does that make sense?
Oh, sure. I think the biggest one is, I think a lot of recruiters still have the mindset, they can't get out of the mindset of just every social platform is a post and pray platform, that it's there for me to put out my jobs that I'm recruiting for. And I think all these people are going to respond to that and want to come look at my jobs, when in reality, that actually in today's market, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that's almost counterproductive. And it turns people off more than it turns people on. When you're on these communities, they want folks that are going to contribute and offer value-added information and engage in the conversation, not just try and, hey, here's what I need from you type of thing. So it's a challenge to, even though you educate folks on that, you still find people that fall into that rut of all they do is post the jobs they're recruiting for. But there's only, you can lead a horse to water, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, when we're coaching recruiters on how to show up daily and having a strategy around it, I mean, that posting jobs and showing the jobs that you're working on, I think can be important in terms of credibility, particularly if you're in business development or you're trying to attract the right candidates. I think they want to know what are the jobs that you're working on. But, once you have over 1,000 connections, just understanding the simple fact that all 1,000 of those connections are not looking for a job at any one moment means that you want to give them other content that's going to be interesting. It could be even entertaining at times. Like it's just thinking about, okay, this audience, people I'm connecting with, what are they going to like? And I think what's happened is, you can post jobs and you can get results at certain times. But when we look at how competitive it is right now, what can separate you from one recruiter to another is something simple like a personal brand. Like maybe you do share a video. Let's say if you're in healthcare, you find a really hilarious video that every nurse in the world can connect with that's on TikTok, and you go, you know what, maybe my network of nurses will find this humorous, and you post that, and suddenly those candidates that you've been searching after, or those people you've been searching after, resonate with it, and you're starting to get an inflow. And I think that's where the simplification of it comes in, and then also just being willing to experiment. So, just talking about the healthcare industry, I know it's super competitive. So what are some of the things that you're coaching recruiters on in terms of how to get creative and how to stand out and how to reach people that are, from my experience, pretty unreachable? How do you coach people on that?
So what's interesting is it's not really that out of the box, and it's not really overly innovative. But fortunately or unfortunately, it is very different from what most recruiters do. And I teach people and coach people on getting to know their candidate as a person first. And before you even suggest any opportunities for them, they're a person. Find out what's going on in their life, what they're about, what they prefer. And rather than, they say recruiting is sales, but my motto has always been, well, if you do your job right, you never really have to sell anything. Because if you listen to what your candidates are telling you that they are looking for, your job is then to deliver that solution for them. And if you do that, candidates want to be heard. They want to know that they're being listened to. Most recruiters are very transactional, which, again, from my perspective, selfishly, I say, great, keep being transactional, because it makes it that much easier for me to be different. I want to take time with you. I want to get to know you. I'm not necessarily, when I reach out to you and connect with you for the first time, I'm not focused on recruiting you for a position. I'm focused on getting to know you and opening up a dialogue. And hopefully at some point I'll be able to help you, but maybe not. But I'm going to help you some way, whether it's a placement or as a resource. But I just want to open a dialogue and get to know you and have a conversation and see where it goes from there. That's how we're doing it. And it's been proven very fruitful. And recruiters are always blown away by saying, I love it when recruiters look at you and say, wow, this stuff really works. I'm like, it's just basic, just have a conversation. I think recruiters get so focused on, I need to get this person for this job versus just interacting with the talent in the marketplace, whether you have a job for them or not. And it's all about networking and growing that network. And eventually everybody gets connected.
Well, so how do you balance that into a recruiter's day? Because obviously I just think of, typical 360 environment. You've got the KPIs, you've got the activity goals you've got to hit, you've got send outs you need to make, you've got to get open jobs, and there's activity that you've got to do. So how do you build that into, or what advice would you give to people that are looking to build that into their schedule? Like, do you dedicate time for that, or like how strategically, how do you work activities like that in?
So I'm a big planner, and I'm a believer that if you're on a 360 desk, you should have balance in every day. So if you're a 360 desk, every day you should be recruiting. Every day you should be doing business development. So whether it's you take the morning to do one and the afternoon to the other, and you flip flop it another day, you should be doing a little bit of every activity every day. I was that guy where, I'd say, okay, well, Friday, all I'm going to do is check references because I'm way behind. And that would never happen. Or this week, all I'm going to do is, pull in clients because I have no job orders. And then I pull in all these clients and then I have no candidates. So, trial and error says you got to balance. You got to do a little bit of each every day. And that takes planning. So, I'm pretty anal retentive, and I'm one of those guys that has a color-coded Outlook calendar that is blocked out in chunks. So I know what's going on, because if I don't see it, it won't get done. and B, so I can get those reminders to tell me to shift gears and go start on something else. And if that works for recruiters, great. I don't force a method of planning. I just want them to plan. I don't care how they plan. I just want them to plan. And if that means, okay, I need, for example, I'll take accounting and finance on a perm desk. Let's say, I need staff accountants because those are always in demand. So I've got to build out time to call staff accountants. But during that time, I want a list of people I'm ready to call when that time hits. So it takes some pre-planning. And let's say I don't have any jobs right now for financial analysts. That doesn't mean that at some point in my week, I shouldn't build out time to network with financial analysts, because at some point I'm going to need them. And if I'm reactive instead of proactive, then I'm going to be late to the party and I'm not going to have a chance to fill those jobs. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it does. I think that's a big trap that people fall into, is just being reactive and not being proactive when it comes to just networking and getting to know people with any industry, which I think is massive. Where do you, in your experience, I know you've worked at a lot of massive companies and you've obviously had some higher level roles. Where do you think the transactional nature of recruiting, like why has that happened, and why is it still happening as much as it does? Like we have this comment, for example, on this live show. It says, "Hello from London. I think recruiters don't have the best reputation," which, I think a lot of people can feel that way. But why
Sure.
do you think that's happened? And do you see that changing? Like, what are your thoughts on why it happened? And do you see that changing?
I see it changing in the sense that candidates aren't really putting up with it much anymore. They're finding the better recruiters, and the viewer is correct. Recruiters don't have the best reputation because of that. That being said, I always tell people, then you haven't met the right recruiter yet. So, try and get someone that you feel more comfortable with. And really, recruiters need to do a couple things. The number one beef that every candidate has about recruiter is they never call me back. So ghosting is a huge issue, and that's very easy to solve. I always tell folks it takes very little time to return a call, takes very little time to return an email, and I practice what I preach. If you send me a message, I get back to you. And that gets back to our part about talking about engagement. And you're very good about this. On whenever you have a post, anytime that I make a comment or I engage in a conversation on one of your posts, you're quick to respond back and re-engage. That's the type of thing that sets you apart from other people. And the transactional nature, I get it. Recruiters are under a lot of pressure to fill jobs, and they want, churn and burn, make that commission, get the placement, move on. The better recruiters are the ones that actually keep up with their candidates, communicate with them, follow up with them. That's the aspect that candidates are looking for and almost demanding now. If they want to work with you, they don't want someone that's just going to plug them into a job. They want someone that's going to be more of a career partner and that will listen and understand them.
I think I read recently somebody had a post that said, "No news is still news to a candidate."
That's great. I like that.
Yeah, I'd love that too, because it is so true. And I think I honestly think social media can help with things like this, because if you're more active on social media, if you're out there and you're more visible, you're gonna get called out and stuff. Like if you're a recruiter and you're talking about not ghosting candidates and you ghosted 3 candidates that week, somebody's gonna call you out on that. So
you're right.
I think hopefully things like personal brand can help with that. What are you seeing, like how you obviously with like follow up and things like that, like how do you train your team and how do you coach them on getting more effective with that? Because I know after just sitting in the recruitment seat for the last 5, 6, 7 years, that things just get out of control and people slip through the cracks. So like, what are some practical actionable items that you'd give to people right now to just say, if you're having an issue with that, here's a couple things you can do?
So real easy, because you're right. If you're an organized person, this business will make you disorganized. If you're doing it right, you have so much going on. You're absolutely right. So with that, it's very easy to use your ATS to set reminders. And again, I try not to overthink it. So you don't even have to put it in there and put it in Outlook. Sometimes they're synced together. But for example, after you place a candidate, as a recruiter, the better recruiters realize that that's not the end, that's really the beginning. And because you want, a couple things are going to happen in the future of that candidate's career. Either they're going to want to move on again, so you want them to come back to you, or they're going to advance and need to hire people, and you still want them to come back to you for that. So you want to stay in touch with that person. The only way I knew how to do that was simply go into my ATS and put reminders. And what I would do is, after I placed someone, I would go in there every month, over the first week, of course, but then I'd go month 1 through 6 and then 12. And when you call them on that 12th month to wish them a happy 1-year anniversary at their job, or when you call them on their birthday to wish them happy birthday, you can set yourself reminders to do that. You do it once and you're done. And it makes such a difference and an impact in that candidate's world. Recruiters have to remember, your candidates aren't going to call you back if they don't remember you. And the only way they're going to remember you is if you make the effort to stay in touch with them.
I love it. It's so true. And I think it's the basic things. I mean, it's the same with sales, right? It's like you lose so many sales because you don't follow up, you don't follow through. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about Moneymakers too, the book, like what inspired you to write the book, and just give us a brief overview of what the book is about, who the ideal reader is as well. And obviously we'll link the book as well up to here so people can check it out.
Sure.
But what inspired you to write a book? Was that something that you'd been planning for a long time, or you just thought this is the year to do it? Like what inspired it?
It's interesting. I love to write. That's always been a passion of mine. And at a former employer, I was heading up all of direct hire placement across the country. And my boss at the time, who was the president of the company, made a suggestion to me. He said, you know what, why don't you, like each week, why don't you just send something out to kind of remind people of certain fundamentals that they should be practicing on their desk? I said, great idea. So we started this campaign, and it was called Ruffini's Moneymaker of the Week. And it's funny. It's funny because that president is the president and CEO of the current company I work for. I've worked for this gentleman 3 times. His name is Brendan Courtney, and he's an amazing person in the staffing industry. So I'll give him some props there. So I started sending these things out. And after a while, I had several hundred of these things. And, someone said to me, goes, oh, that would make a great book. I was like, you know what, I guess it would. And it'd be great to share it. So I started compiling them and weeding them out and taking the best ones and tailoring them to a generic audience so they could help both recruiters and sales professionals. And then I said, you know what if I came up with my top 52? So there was one for every week of the year. So recruiters could basically don't apply the whole book, just apply one technique at a time, one technique a week at a year. So that was the mindset behind it. So there's 52 moneymakers and a couple extra bonus ones that you can implement on your desk that will improve your productivity and ultimately lead to more income if you follow them. They're tried and true. So that was the mindset behind the book.
What's been the feedback so far in terms of people who've read the book, and I mean, what's that been like in terms of just interacting with people who have read it?
It's been great. I've it's funny because people have reached out to me on LinkedIn who I don't know from Adam, who have reached out and said, hey, got your book, loved it. I'm using it to train all my new hires. That's the most gratification that I could ever imagine. Because I didn't market the book. I self-published it, and I wasn't looking to put it out there as a money maker, even though it's called Moneymakers. I wanted to share my knowledge with the community, and the satisfaction I get knowing that other recruiting and staffing leaders across the country are using it to train their people. That's validation in and of itself that these things, okay, I'm not crazy. These things actually work, and it wasn't just for me. So that's been great.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's cool. I mean, that's what I love about even just content on LinkedIn and the ability that we have to be able to build brands. And I think obviously writing a book is a great way to really impact people at that day level as well. But you never really know who you're impacting when we're doing these things, which is I think that's part of the fun as well.
So true. And you don't know which part of what you say is going to impact a person. Some people may benefit from one topic, others may benefit from a totally separate topic, but you just never know. And, the only way that any of us got anywhere in this business was from learning and borrowing from each other. So why not continue that?
I just stole everything.
Well, I was being kind. I said learning and borrowing. You and I both know you're sitting next to someone, they're on the phone, they're like, oh, I'm taking that.
Well, actually, it's a great topic as well, because obviously a lot of recruitment agencies, a lot of companies are obviously switching to remote work. And I remember just thinking, as I was starting the recruitment world, I worked remotely, but I'd often get together with people just so I could listen to that conversation, so I could learn. So how have you been adopting, like, bring particularly new people into the industry or people with zero experience? How are you bringing them in, and how are you helping train them to where they can still learn like that? Like, what are some of the things that you've been doing to? Because again, I just think that the conversations that we have and the ability to be able to listen to those conversations and listen to different situations, it's really hard to replicate. And I've heard of people doing like mock interviews and that type of stuff. But what are some things that you've been doing to kind of help with that?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of role playing, but you can only do so much role playing. You've got to be embedded and hear both sides of a conversation to really coach someone. So we've got our newer recruiters are all back in the office real live. We've got a graduated situation where they can earn the right to work hybrid over time. But right now we started, coming back into the office after July 4th. And for the foreseeable future, that's not going to change. So all your new folks are in there together. The senior folks can come in and they hybrid. So they're in some days, they're out some days. But what I do and other leaders in the organization do is we will, sit desk side with folks. And if we're not desk side, through the beauty of technology, I can be in Florida and a recruiter can be in Tennessee, and I can be tapped into their conversation because we all use the phones are all in their computers. So they click to dial, and you can be tapped in so that you can hear both sides of the conversation. And after the conversation, you've got a coaching moment saying, okay, well, here's what happened. Here's how you handled it. Could you have done something different? And trying to get them again to realize ways that they can extend the conversation, handle objections, navigate, and still get their job done, et cetera. So I don't think there's anything, again, I agree with you in the sense that for someone new, if they're not submerged in a bullpen open environment where they can hear folks around them, I think they're at a disadvantage. The more tenured you are, the more seasoned you are, the less you may feel you need that environment. Personally, every time I'm in that environment, there's so much energy. I don't want to be anywhere else. It's just that's what you crave.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think I just think that energy part is the massive part, and particularly in recruitment, it's just are those days where you're giving out, you're having so many conversations that it can be hard to energize yourself at home. And I live in Wisconsin, so when it snows and it's dark, it can get, remote work can get lonely. But
you still have Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, well, makes it all worth it. So true, so true. What about, another issue which I always like to bring up is just retention in general, and that success in the first year of recruitment, where it seems like, again, at one of the last agencies I worked at, they just had an issue, a struggle with bringing new people on and getting them to a point where they're successful, they're not burned out. What have you seen over the years in terms of successful ways to bring people on? That could be something like split desk, or it could be just focusing on their strengths. But what types of things are you doing to make sure that in that first year people are successful, and what are some things that you've seen work well over the years?
Well, first and foremost, and you're right, that first year in recruiting, if you can make it through that first year, you can have a great career. But that first year is enormously difficult. It's going to be up and down like a yo-yo. So first and foremost, I think the company has to train that person, especially for those, whether they've had previous recruiting or not. If they've had previous recruiting, they have to learn your processes and methodologies. But for those that are completely green coming in, leadership has an obligation to provide the tools and to guide them, and not just throw it at them and say, learn this and do it, and then I'm going to walk away and the heck with it. Leadership has to mentor them and train them and guide them and have a structured way for the development, and have measurable objectives of what the expectations are. I think a lot of times that communication and that transparency as far as here's what we expect from you, here's what you can expect from us, that sometimes is what causes the demise of some of these new hires, because that's not made clear. Recruiters need to understand what they're hired to do, and more importantly, what the expectations are, but more importantly than that, why those expectations are there. If you understand the why behind it, don't just tell me to make 250 dials. Tell me why I'm making 250 dials. Don't tell me I need 10 send outs over a period of time. Tell me why. Bring in, tell me the thought behind it is, hey, if you do this, this is what will happen, and this is why. It's not just because we don't want folks doing activities for the sake of hitting a number. You want them doing activities for the sake of getting to the ultimate result, which is putting people to work. So if they understand that, it's my experience, they're more motivated because they understand why they're doing it and they understand what's in it for them. But that expectation has to be set, and they have to be held accountable. You can't just set
Do
it
you
up
think
there
that's changed more over time, that people, I guess people coming into the workforce are more, they want to know why more than perhaps in the past, or is that something that you think has always been there?
I think it's always been there sporadically. I think it's more prevalent now. I think we've got a workforce now that is less patient. So if they don't feel like they're either understanding what they're doing, or if they're not passionate about what they're doing and why they're doing it, they don't have a problem moving on. And because of that, companies need to take note and be aware of that, because this workforce is not afraid to leave without even having another job. If they're not getting out of a job what they need to get out of a job, they'd rather move on and try and find it somewhere else than stick it out for a paycheck.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that why is massive as well. I think even just in terms of coaching, like if you're gonna have KPIs, you're gonna have metrics, you got to use them to coach people, and not. I think if people start feeling like you're just using it to micromanage them or somehow bring the control, that's a massive issue. I
100% agree.
We got a question here too from Kyle. So Kyle said, I posed this question on another discussion. Well, just you shouldn't bring it up again. You're not allowed to bring up things twice on LinkedIn. But anyway, but how do you guys see recruitment of foreign workers going with regards to COVID and border closures? Interesting question here. But how do you guys see recruitment of foreign workers going with regards to COVID and border closures? Any thoughts on that, John? I know it's a little bit outside of what we were talking about, but
I am ignorant to this topic, admittedly. I know we have areas within our organization that bring in foreign clinicians, but I don't know enough about it, and I'm not intimately involved in that part of the organization. So I couldn't even comment on it.
Well, at least you're honest
not
about
not
that.
a good answer, Kyle. Sorry.
Hey, I'm right there with you. I probably need to learn a little bit more. But Kyle, great question there. Sorry we don't have more to give you. Guys, if you have other questions too on healthcare specifically, or anything else that's domestic in recruitment, we'd love to help you guys out. This is another question too. I always wonder, like, at what point, kind of going back to the entry level people, and obviously you do a lot of training and coaching, which is why I'm bringing this up. But what point do you look at somebody and see that they're struggling? Like, is there a certain time frame where you're like, hey, maybe this isn't right for you, or like at what point? Or what are some of the questions you'd be asking? Let's say if you're at that 9-month mark and you just like, this is just doesn't feel right. Like at what point do you just say, okay, maybe 360 isn't right for me, or maybe recruitment isn't right for me? Is there a certain point you get to?
I'll answer that twofold. From the 360 perspective, I always think it's more important that the person first master the candidate side of the business before they go into working a full desk. Candidates will tell you everything you need to know about any market anywhere. So if they develop a good network of candidates, it will make that transition much easier, because then they'll actually have product to talk about with these hiring managers when they start calling them. Separate. I just had to throw that in there. There's recruiting obviously is not for everybody. And the sooner that both parties can recognize whether it is working or not, the better for both parties. Again, you don't want someone just hanging on and constantly, be putting on put on a performance improvement plan and you got to hit these metrics to keep your job. That's never worked out in my experience, because then you're hitting numbers to hit a number and just keep your seat and get a paycheck. That's where the expectations and the involvement of leadership at a personal level, those weekly one-on-ones with your recruiters, I think those are critically important, to kind of take some time to say, hey, tell me what's going on, tell me what's working, what's not working. It's not just about placement. So early on, sometimes it takes people longer to kick in than others. So we have a person right now at our company. She joined us and she had recruiting experience, had never done healthcare. It took her 5 or 6 months to really get a handle on it, and now she's like top 5 in the company. She's kicking it. But during that 5 or 6 months, she was working her butt off. You could tell she was putting in the effort, putting in the time, had tons of activity, was reaching out, because you get people, that's what you look for early on. Are you doing the work? Are you doing the work? And if you're doing the work, management should be somewhat patient, because sometimes it just takes people longer to get it to kick in. But the more work that you have on a recruiter's desk, then the more data you have as a manager to dive in and see, okay, you're doing all this work, you're not getting to the finish line. Let's see why. And again, that's management's responsibility, in my opinion, to do that with their new people. If management does all they can to provide the tools and to guide the people, and it doesn't work out, well, then that's on the person. But if management doesn't provide that guidance, then that's really on the company and the management, in my opinion. So if you do that, that helps kind of, figure out where the disconnect is happening. So early on, you look for activity I look for activity and I look for job satisfaction. The person's got to be enjoying what they're doing. If they're not, then who we kidding? Then it's not good for either party. But if they're still enjoying it, but they're just not getting to the finish line, well, then let's kind of figure out where the missing link might be to get them there. The quicker you can get them to that placement, then the quicker they buy into it and believe in themselves.
Yeah, I love it. And then the only reason that question came around is I just used to hear all the time that, that kind of sentiment of, it's sink or swim, and like you either sink or it just comes naturally. And I just think that you can be really quick to write somebody out, but they might have other skills that, like you said, maybe it just takes a little bit longer. By the way,
or maybe you hire someone into your company as a recruiter and they're great for your company. They're just not a good recruiter. So maybe you find another opportunity within the organization because culturally they're great. The recruiter just might not be the right role for them. So all those things have to kind of, you got to keep an open mind with that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're 100% right. And I think, again, that's being, it's caring about people and bringing them into the organization. And no, I was just going to say, Kyle said, no problem at all. He said, thanks.
Thanks for understanding, Kyle.
Another question here. This is from Stuart. So Stuart's actually the graduate of our academy. He has been absolutely killing it with content. And I think he's won like deals off the back of some of his content. Really cool. His company's growing as well. But he just said, any advice on expanding from the UK market to the US market? John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I'm sure, I know you've worked at companies that have operated at a global scale. Any thoughts on, these guys in the UK that are looking to come over to the US in terms of, how they should operate, or any thoughts on that?
It's a great question. And I know plenty of firms that have a presence in both Europe and the United States. I would only guess that I haven't done it myself, obviously, but if you're coming from a foreign market to the US market, try to align yourself with some folks that are doing it now. I think if you try and come in and do it cold, there's a huge learning curve. So if you can get some mentors to help you kind of find your way, do your research ahead of time, know what you're going to go into, take a look at the market and see which industries are more prime for growth, if you will, where you'd have more success. What you're doing in Europe might not necessarily translate in the United States, so it might have to be a different vertical. I don't know. And the way you do it in Europe, I imagine, would be slightly different. Then again, you probably could make minor enhancements to your process and methodology over there, and it would work over here. If you know how to recruit and you're successful and you're driven, I think you can do it anywhere. But I would do my homework and try and get involved with some organizations that would help mentor you and learn the climate and all the fun legal stuff that we have to deal with also.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've talked to a couple of companies recently that are, in the UK based, and they've set up operations and just been killing it over here in terms of the markets that they serve. And, I think it's great advice. Like, get that mentorship, find people who have done it, and then just research. But I mean, the cool thing is nowadays is you can do so much in terms of connecting with people through video.
Oh, yeah.
And just, I just think of Zoom calls, how that has revolutionized things.
It's become so mainstream.
It has. All I would say too, Stuart, is you probably have some late nights, because there's a time difference. And that's what I've learned about working with UK people. So, and then Stuart said our areas in the US are definitely growth areas, but I like the advice about mentors in the US. Many thanks. Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate all this engagement, guys, as well. Kyle, Stuart, Kritika,
awesome.
Lisa. Yeah, good to see you guys out there. And guys, if you're checking us out too after we record this and you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, definitely check out the recording notes. We're going to have links to John's book. We're going to have some links on his LinkedIn profile as well. So definitely connect with him. Now, you also run a live show as well, which I'm going to be a part of in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
So what inspired that, and what's the show about?
It was just the show is about, it's hosted by me and another gentleman, Richard Rosner. We're both recruiters, both in different verticals. We met through the American Staffing Association, and he actually posed the question to me. He said, "Hey, would you want to host a weekly show about staffing and recruiting, just about getting to issues within the staffing and the recruiting market, very broad, and do a general non-scripted discussion with some of the the top people in our industry and topics that recruiters want to know more about." And so we started it, and you'll be on next week, thankfully, and that'll be our 25th show. So you will be our silver guest, I guess you could say.
Yes. I love it.
So yeah, so it's been a lot of fun.
Cool. Well, I think live shows and the live conversations are great, and I advise people too, like, why not do one and get the exposure, get the experience, and get to connect with people. So love that. Well, we're wrapping up for time here. I want to be sensitive of your time as well, John, and I appreciate you giving us your wisdom and advice and sharing your story. I always like to end this show with the question, again, going back to the more entry-level guys, but I don't know where. I think my care for people who are joining our industry has just come in, because I just think that people can just have really bad experiences, and it's almost like they have a bad experience and then they think that that's the whole industry. From the conversations I've had with most agency owners, there are some amazing agencies out there. And so if you are unlucky and you get a bad experience, I'd love to just introduce people to people who aren't creating those types of environments. So if you were to say, or kind of speak to somebody who's maybe in that situation, they're brand new, they're in maybe not the greatest environment, what advice would you have for that recruiter? What would you say to them? And how, what piece of advice would you give them right now if you could just speak to them one-on-one?
Call me. Call me. No, to your point, Joel, if you have a first experience in recruiting and it's with a bad firm, but you still like the idea of recruiting, again, don't assume that is the same everywhere. There really isn't. So if you go to organizations, I would say talk to the American Staffing Association. They've got they have people from all over the country, and they can put you in touch with people who know of good firms. I would do the same. I've done that for recruiters. They'll say, "Hey, I'm coming to this area. Who should I call?" And I'll say, "Call this, this, and this. Don't call this," just because you know the cultures that exist. But getting involved and reaching out to a firm like the American Staffing Association that has a national reach, wherever you are, they're going to be able to point out the firms in your marketplace that have a better reputation than others. So I'd start there.
Yeah, I love it. Well, guys, too, I would also connect with John on
Please.
LinkedIn. I just think, how he is right now is just exactly like that in the DMs and through email, and just, just on any call I've had, just really, really willing to give advice and help out. And the training that he runs is amazing. I know a couple of people who have gone through it and just have nothing but great things to say. So connect with John. We'll have his link obviously on this post. And if you're in that situation where maybe you're thinking, I don't know if where I'm at is the right place, get a hold of either one of us too, because I know a lot of really great companies right now that are hiring, they're taking on people. I think John is actually hiring as well. You might have to be local. But if you're in the area,
don't have to be local. Not anymore, thanks to COVID.
You don't have to be local. So if you're in the market for something new and you're interested, get a hold of myself, reach out to John, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. And again, I appreciate your time. Love the wisdom that you brought. Love the humility as well. I know you've done a lot of amazing things within the industry. You've worked with lots of recruiters. You've trained them up. You've been super successful yourself. So I really appreciate you just spending time with us. And for anyone who's listening, go follow this guy. Connect with him. Thanks
for having me. I love what you're doing, Joel, and I love what you do on LinkedIn. And you talk about someone who unselfishly gives. You're living it. So thank you for all you're doing. Appreciate having me on. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I'm going to end the broadcast. Although Mark just jumped on, so we got to flash this guy. He's great too. So he just said great advice. Thanks, Mark. Thanks Kyle, Mark. Stuart, Kritika, Lisa, Miro. Great to have you guys. I'm going to end this broadcast right now.